Welcome to the Necromaniacs podcast. I'm here with my buddy Mike.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back, Mike. Welcome back, all listeners.
Welcome back, and I hope everyone's doing well.
Yeah, it's a new year, 2017. We've had our usual but not planned 2-month break since December, and we are back with a new batch of films to discuss for all you maniacs.
Before we get into that, though, there's a couple of really cool-looking movies that I think deserve a mention here.
Yep.
And the first one is The Void.
Yeah, that's the buzz on that is growing. I only just saw that teaser trailer the other day after seeing a good couple people I know who are horror fans in my Facebook feed talk about it, and man, it looks pretty insane.
Yeah, and it's by Steven Kostansky and Jeremy Gillespie, who I believe are part of the Astron 6
family
production group.
Yes. Yeah.
And, those guys, normally their stuff is a little bit more like dark comedy, like horror comedy, more of a satirical element to it. And I remember when I first started being aware of what they were doing, The Void was like a sort of idea that was in progress, like a work in progress.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. Now I'm kind of remembering that. And it's funny, having, been checking out what those guys have been doing over the years. It had kind of crossed my mind, like, what would these guys do with a straight kind of horror movie, so to speak. And a lot of people have thrown around. It's like a cross between, Fulci and Carpenter. And let me tell you, that's what that trailer looks like to me. It looks like if you take those two and throw a shitload of money behind it. Yeah. It looks like, it looks like these special effects look really special,
Yeah, there's also this, H.P. Lovecraft, like
cosmic
vibe to it. And it's almost like they made a whole movie out of the hell scene in Event Horizon or something like that.
Yeah, again, that movie, had some of its setbacks with the special effects. Some of the special effects were great in it, but, you throw it up against 20 years later and, obviously you could probably make it a little bit better, right? By today's standards.
Yeah, so that's definitely something that we're going to have our eyes on.
Absolutely.
And then there's another film called The Devil's Candy, which I don't know if you've seen the trailer.
No, I have not.
It's posted on the Facebook page for Necromaniacs, and it's it looks like sort of like a sort of homage to like a slasher vibe to it. There's like a lone guy possibly possessed by evil spirits who's going around mutilating people. And
American film?
It's an American film.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Cool, huh?
And then on my own, I saw a movie called The Love Witch.
Yeah, now The Love Witch, I actually wanted to see that last year. I have seen the director's prior movie, which of course the name's escaping me now, which has no kind of horror element to it as well, but it was kind of set in the 70s, and it really looked like a 70s film. But this one has a bit of a 60s angle. However, from what I understand, it takes place in the here and now. It just looks like the 60s.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it. It's kind of a tongue-in-cheek film in some ways. It's in Technicolor.
Yeah.
The acting.
Shot on film, yep.
Everything is very much like late 60s, early 70s, like psychedelic witches, really hot chicks.
Yes,
like really,
stunning
really
women. Absolutely.
Women. But there's like 2 anachronisms in the movie that update it. In one scene, one of the chicks pulls out an iPhone.
Ah, yes,
and then there's like a modern car in one scene. So I was like, wait, did she just pull out an iPhone? And yeah, sure enough, it was like some, smartphone.
Yeah. I read, I attempted to go see it last fall, and it was sold out. And like I thought I would be able to walk up and buy tickets at the new Alamo Draft House. This was after like a show I was at.
The new Alamo.
Yes, the new Alamo,
is
right,
the place
in
that we
Brooklyn.
complained about.
Well, the thing is this, they it seemed, I kind of checked in advance about walk-up tickets, and they said there would be. And I got there, and it's like, oh, no, there's no walk-up tickets. Forget it. Blah, blah. I was like, oh, man, come on. But I kind of I was able to walk around the theater anyway, and I got to hear the director speak and talk about the movie at the tail end of the prior show that I wanted to see. So that was kind of cool. And then that was when somebody addressed about the time frame, and she's like, oh, no, it's now. Yeah. She goes, it has the, I like, I'm partial to that 60s look, and I wanted this film to have that look, but the movie takes place now, so that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's cool. I enjoyed it. It's fairly accurate about like the whole Habandia, like Wiccan, witchcraft sort of trip, and then there's like the dark side of that too, and there's tons of really good looking women in it.
Yes, yes. Her prior film as well. I don't have my usual iPad with me tonight, so I unfortunately am spacing at the name of her prior film. But yeah, you should check that out as well. It's really, really interesting 70s movie, like set in the 70s, shot in the 2000s, of course.
And then, of course, we have the return of Twin Peaks coming up.
Oh, totally. Can't wait for that.
That's going to be great.
I just got my Fire Walk With Me vinyl in the mail the other day. Nice. And yeah, I am all ready for the new Twin Peaks. I'm glad that like nobody seems to know really what it's like, what it's going to be, and I hope they kind of stick to that for as far as they can leading up to it. Like I like that idea.
And then the Return of the Walking Dead.
Yep.
What do you think of the first episodes?
Well, like as a Walking Dead fan, you got to keep the saying they can't all be home runs with you. It wasn't a great return episode. I really didn't think it was. It wasn't like the worst episode, but it wasn't like a great kind of return mid-season comeback episode, except for the very end.
Yeah, the ending was cool.
Yeah, but hey, I'm there. I'm not going anywhere.
Well, let me ask you a question. The viewership has dropped off a little bit.
Yeah, it has. It has.
So, do you think they were entering the twilight of The Walking Dead?
Maybe. But I would almost say we've got 2 more full seasons, in my opinion, after this season. I don't think the next season is the last one, but I will say 2 more full seasons. How do you like that?
Okay.
I could be wrong, though. It could be after this one more, but I almost feel like the public would know that at this point because we're into the new year and we're halfway through this current one. So I feel like, business-wise and like contract-wise, we would know this. I'm going to say 2 more seasons.
2 more.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because what else can they do? Look, they can mirror the comic all you want, but a comic can go forever, technically.
Yeah. Yep.
A TV show can't go forever, as we know. So, I don't know. I could be wrong, right?
Because I feel like the Negan storyline, even in the comic, was like the last really interesting storyline. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I actually jumped out a little past the death of Glenn in the comic wise. I stopped reading.
Yeah.
And not really because I was hating it, just because I was like, I'm shifting my comic energy elsewhere. Because I understand it got really good again in the comics.
Yeah, it got good.
But again, I don't know how long you can take a TV show. I mean, look at Game of Thrones. We know there's 2 left. That's it.
And they're going to be shorter.
Regardless of what happens in the books. Yes. A 7-episode season and an 8-episode season. That's it. That's all we're getting. The show's going to be over. HBO is committed to this, and that's that. AMC is a bit of a different animal, I guess. I mean, there's way more episodes, number one. There's more at stake. It's commercial television. That's number 2. But how long can you keep a show going for? Can you do 10 years of a horror TV show like that?
Yeah, I mean,
maybe, but
yeah, I mean, because the formula of like what happens is kind of the same. It's all right, cool. These guys go through a hardship. There's like this terrible enemy, which isn't the undead; it's actually a human element, and then they somehow prevail in the end. And that's like kind of like the repeated pattern of how the story.
But we don't know the actual cause of the zombies, right? We don't know. There are things we don't know, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But if you're going to wrap this show up, I think you're going to have to create something that's not in the comics.
Yeah, totally.
And that's cool.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Well, I mean, the storyline has already diverged drastically.
Yeah.
I mean, we have like characters like Daryl who don't even appear in the comic books. We have all kinds of like, sub stories and
Again,
people
I think
dying.
much like Game of Thrones is going to wrap up with something outside the books because the books are not finished, and who the hell knows when they're coming out. We're going to have a TV wrap up at some point. I could be wrong though. I mean, it does well, but you can't stay on top. Nobody's number one forever.
No.
That's the bottom line. No. TV included.
Have you read the Game of Thrones books?
Yes. I really only enjoyed those first 3 and some of the fourth one. I read the first 4. I didn't read the 5th one. Like I started and I just wasn't really that into it.
Okay.
But I'm very committed to the show and I love the show.
Yeah, see, I haven't read them, so I just watched the show.
The first 3 are fantastic, actually.
Okay.
They're worth reading.
Yeah, I think I might read them.
Yeah.
All right.
But
so,
yes, back to Autopsy of Jane Doe. So yeah, it's the kind of a horror hit in a way. Came out late 2016 film. I watched it about 2 weeks ago on Amazon. It's a supernatural horror film directed by Andre Orvidal. It stars some familiar faces: Emil Hirsch and Brian Cox as a father and son coroners who experience supernatural phenomena as they examine the body of an unidentified woman played by a beautiful actress, Olwen Kelly. And yeah, it had its premiere in September at the Toronto Film Festival in 2016, and it was released December 21st of last year. And yeah, a lot of people, checking it out through the winter and really liking it.
Yeah, Andre Overdahl, he did Troll Hunter, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then Brian Cox was he played Hannibal Lecter in one of my favorite movies.
Oh
of all
yeah,
time.
he's a great actor. He's a really good
Manhunter.
actor. Probably one of the better kind of go-to character actors. Like you want somebody to play like a haggard kind of dad or like an older guy kind of who's been through a lot. He's kind of the guy to go to. I feel
Definitely,
like.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so Autopsy starts off with there's an unidentified corpse of a young woman that's discovered at the scene of a crime.
Crime scene.
basically.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like half buried, and there's all this carnage surrounding her, and the cops come and investigate it. And this is the first thing that grabbed me is that when there's an autopsy to be performed, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know, I'm not an expert on these types of things, but don't they usually have like a coroner's office at the police station?
No, not at the police station. I
Okay.
believe not. No. It is a separate place that the police or the EMTs bring the body to. I do not think. No, it is not at the police station. No way.
Okay, I didn't know that.
It's in more of a literal, almost like sterile kind of setting, like hospital-ish setting. It's a separate place.
Okay. All right, cool.
I don't
didn't
think,
know that.
unless not. Again, I don't. It might be at like a bigger hub, but I don't think it's at like say, the 61st precinct on Coney Island Avenue. I don't know if there's no kind of autopsy spot down there.
I just thought it was a little odd that there's like a father-son like pathologist,
in town.
there, like this like sort of house.
But I guess in the small towns, that is how they do it. No, I mean that might be how they do it. Who knows? I mean,
it seems
that's a
like,
good point.
Funeral home, yes, but
interesting.
doing an actual autopsy, it seemed a little confusing to me.
I feel like it's a separate place, a medical kind of place. Maybe someone can let us know, listeners. You never know.
So anyway, Brian Cox and Emil Hirsch, who was in Alpha Dog,
And a lot of movies, actually. Yeah.
Alpha Dog.
Yeah. Good actor.
They play Austin Tilden and Dr. Tommy Tilden. Mm-hmm. And so they take him to this the team, the father-son team of coroners, and they start discovering all these like oddities about the body.
Yep.
Okay, where it appears that there's like
No rigidity.
and clouding of the eyes,
Alabaster skin, and kind of like very pristine formed kind of dead body.
Yeah.
But all the bones, a lot of bones are broken internally,
Ankles.
but there's no outward bruising.
Yeah.
And the cloudy eyes, like all this weird shit. They're like, what is,
Stuff that doesn't add up.
Right, exactly.
So this is kind of like where the mystery begins,
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that originally when I first discovered this movie, I didn't know anything about it.
Right.
I thought like Autopsy of Jane Doe was going to be this like, gory,
Me too.
gore film
Yep.
basically. I did not expect it to be what it actually was, and I was pleasantly surprised by that.
Yeah.
You know, especially when I saw Brian Cox was in it, because I figured, he adds a little touch of class to a movie. I think.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, yeah. So it sort of developed into an actual, almost like a psychological story, really, in some ways. There was a lot of suspense in it too.
No, totally. It had some cool scares, you know. And I just feel like like I said this before we started. It takes you to a bit of a different place from where you start out, right? We won't get into that just yet, and I thought that was really cool about it. And as they're kind of performing the autopsy on her, the mysteries just unravel, and all the weird things, and the things that start happening outside, and the weather, and just all this weird shit starts happening.
Yeah, there's an actual introduction of a supernatural element.
Yeah.
Where, originally I thought there's just going to be a blood and guts movie. You know what I mean? Okay, so they're getting into doing this autopsy, and they're going through the typical stuff where they have like the tape going and the camera and all this other business. And one of the things I think is interesting is Austin has a girlfriend. His girlfriend Emma, who shows up, and they have like a little bit of a foreshadowing where some of the bodies that are already in the morgue. They notice there's like a tradition among coroners to tie a bell to the toe.
Right.
Because in the past, there are people who have been mistaken for dead, and when the bell rings, they realize
They're
that
like,
they're
oh
actually
shit,
alive.
right. They could just have had like some kind of like attack or something. Like they appear to be dead, but they're not really dead. They're like a coma or something, like some weird shit. Yeah.
What kind of fucking job is that, man? Can you imagine that's your gig?
Yeah, honestly, okay, I've never been to a morgue. I've never, other than wakes, I've never been around a dead body like that. Like, you know what I'm saying?
No.
Technically, going to a wake is being around a dead body. That is the closest I've been to that, though.
Yeah. Like, I've never seen like the reality of death. You know
No,
what I mean?
no.
Like an actual body that hasn't been embalmed and
No,
treated.
no. Hell
sort
no.
of anesthetized.
Never seen it. Nope.
Yeah. So that's this movie sort of like made me think about meditate on mortality and all that sort of stuff,
totally.
So there's like the bell, and you're like, this is it was like kind of a heavy-handed foreshadowing, I thought.
Yes.
You're like, oh, okay. There's a bell on this toe. Maybe down the line there's going to be some
Something with
undead
the bell,
or
right.
something. So no one knows the identity of this the Jane Doe. So hence Jane Doe. And the external, there's no visible signs of trauma. There's no scars. The eyes are cloudy, which is something that usually happens when the body's been dead for a few days.
But it hasn't been. They believe they're like it only happens when it's been a few days. But they think it's been like a day. Like what I'm saying? Like they don't think she's been dead a few days. I think that's the whole thing.
Yeah. Also, her tongue has been cut out.
Yeah, that was sick to show that. That was a pretty sick part.
And he proceeds to examine her vagina.
And it turns out that's been tore up, basically.
Mutilated.
Yeah, mutilated. Very Cannibal Corpse, yes.
Yeah. Nod to Cannibal Corpse.
Yes, Cannibal Corpse, of course.
So once they start entering the body, cutting her open, that's when, they sort of like weird supernatural stuff happens. Like the radio channels start, they start getting interference and all this sort of business.
And he cuts his hand on her like body, like he bruises himself by fucking like scraping across her body.
Yeah.
And Brian Cox character, he kind of keeps that to himself, as we know, as the movie progresses. He doesn't tell his son about this injury he sustained.
And they also, another odd thing is the corpse actually bleeds when they cut into it.
Yeah, like a lot. And it's like suspension of disbelief, of course, because it's a movie. But at that point, I think any coroner would be kind of, wondering what the fuck is going on, obviously.
Yeah. Her lungs are severely blackened as if she'd suffered third-degree burns and all this other stuff. Lots of internally, there's a lot of scar tissue and cuts from like she'd been stabbed, and it's just a lot of stuff doesn't add up because on the outside she seems to be completely normal.
And they find what is Jimson weed in her stomach lining, which they thought was very strange because that Jimson weed was not found where they live, in that part of the country where they live. It's found, they say, in the Northeast or whatever, right? Something like that, they say. So, weird thing after weird thing keeps piling up about this girl's body.
You know, Jimson weed is datura, which is like a you know, a paralysis sort of herb that's been used. You know, so all this like, you know, weird shit starts happening with the radio and all this other stuff,
And there's a storm outside, and then one of the saddest parts of the movie, the cat. They find the cat dead. That was a bummer. Yeah, that was really sad and weird.
you know, Mike and I both being cat guardians.
We have cats. Yes.
You know, that was like, I was like, no, they're gonna kill the cat. No, please don't do that. No.
Thankfully, they didn't show it being killed, which is always nice. They showed it dead, but they didn't show it being killed. But
no, they kind of
well, they all right. Yeah, I kind of got to back that up a little. They show it so injured that Brian Cox has to take mercy on it and pull it out of its misery because it's really suffering.
Yeah.
That was kind of sick to watch.
That was definitely a bummer, and I felt like that was unnecessary.
That was unnecessary. God
That
damn
was
it.
unnecessary.
And then it gets even sadder because he goes, "That was your mother's cat, and the mother is dead." And it's like, oh God. And it was like a reminder of the mother. And I was like, oh boy, thanks for that, director.
So one of the issues that's actually important is that you know, the son and his girlfriend Emma, he sort of comes clean with her, and he says that he doesn't really enjoy this line of work, and they're considering running away,
Doing other shit, moving away. Exactly. Yep.
And one of their plans for the evening was he was gonna, like, you know, leave and
Take her out on a date or
go to
whatever,
movie
huh?
or something like that. So, but then shit gets weird, and
He stays late.
he has to stay late because they have this body, and there's a storm, and all this, you know, unexplained, like, supernatural shit starts happening. But Emma comes back, so
Yeah. This is a great scene. Are we talking about that now or no?
no, we can lead up to it, man.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So you know, they start seeing like bodies, and you know, there's like now I'm perceiving these to be actually hallucinations. They're not actual undead.
Yeah, I agree. And then, like, remember that there's the fire scene where the room catches
Yeah, the room
fire,
catches on fire and
and
just-
all the lights smash out. Well, there are lights still on in the room. Like, there are things that happen that I feel like didn't happen, and I almost feel like part of, like, those are some of the things that didn't happen.
Yeah.
It was just kind of under the spell of the girl, so
Right.
to speak.
Yeah.
Like, there's the whole place catches fire practically, and then everything's kind of okay. It was like kind of like a weird part, like I thought. And all those lights smash,
Yeah.
and there's glass like everywhere, and the place is a mess. And then I feel like later on the place isn't much of a mess. I
Right,
don't know, right?
exactly,
Did you catch that?
Yeah. So like what was happening is you know, this body, there's apparently when they go into the brain, there's like live cells in the brain.
And they also noticed there's a kind of a second layer of skin.
Yeah.
Like there's her outward skin, and then there's the skin inside, and the skin inside has all this crazy writing on it and shit, like this kind of occulty looking writing, right? And yeah, they discovered live cells, and it's like, you know, at this point, obviously any coroner would be losing his fucking mind, calling up 1,000 people or whatever, and you know, this would be like the biggest story ever probably for a coroner or medical examiner.
So there's this idea that, you know, the Jane Doe is somehow still alive, despite
Yes.
the fact that her internal organs have been removed, and, you know, her brain's been cut into, and you know, she has no her lungs are scorched and all this other stuff, and that all of this energy is emanating from her somehow, and she's like the catalyst and all
Right,
this,
and
like,
throughout all
happens.
this, she has not uttered a word.
No.
There's been she hasn't got up, she hasn't moved, she hasn't spoken, she hasn't breathed. So it's kind of really eerie, interesting. Yeah.
And she's just kind of laying there naked.
Just lays there.
you
Yep.
know, naked, with her, you know, titties out and all that sort of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And that's you know, that's got to be a hard gig too, man. Being an
Yeah, and I
actress.
wonder how much of this was this actress, Owen Kelly, sitting there still as a motherfucker, and how much of it was, say, an effects piece. Like, that's it, you know? Like, it was weird to see where that one would start and the other would begin, right? Like, how much of the... I kind of got to do some research and see how much of the movie she was in. It'd be
Because
interesting.
the actual autopsy footage was pretty fucking graphic.
Yeah.
man.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely.
I
Up
mean,
there with, like, sick movies. Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't spare anything on that
No.
end of things. And did you ever see that movie Dead Girl?
No, I didn't see Dead Girl. There's another movie that kind of shares that name, I think, but I didn't see the one you're talking about.
Yeah, we should talk about that one, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that's another one that basically there's an actress who's naked in the whole movie.
And just laying there? Yeah.
Basically, until the end.
Right.
You know? Or she's not actually still, but she's naked. And she's restrained and sort of just doesn't really have any lines and that kind of stuff.
Right. Similar to the girl next door, only that in that movie, that actress had a lot of, she was acting in that movie. Had a lot of lines. But she was tortured and tied up for a lot of it. Yeah.
So, at this point, the father and son Tilden coroner team are starting to, get kind of like, creeped out by this whole situation.
And they get like attacked by spirits, like basically.
Spirits, yeah.
And I think in that the light smashing scene, like right after that, all the other, like just so much shit is happening to them. And I think they themselves are just, the son wants to get the fuck out of there.
Yeah, he wants to leave.
And the dad doesn't want, the dad's like, we have to finish this and all that kind of whole thing.
So they're holed up in this room and the father looks out and he sees like these undead, zombies, or for lack of a better term, advancing on them down the hallway. So he grabs an axe and he goes out to, fucking take care of business.
Yes. And
it turns out that it's Emma.
They run to the elevator because there's an elevator that goes down in the place where the autopsy spot is, and the son is in the elevator, the father's in there, and he goes out of the elevator with the axe, looking to just kind of, give the business to what's attacking to them, and he attacks and chops something up, and apparently it is his girlfriend because you hear the bell.
Yep.
She kind of played a trick on them because they kind of spooked her, so she went to play a trick on them. And it played, it spooked them so much that the dad fucking came out there with an axe and swung it.
You hit her with an axe.
Yeah, that was a pretty sick scene. And she's really dead. This isn't a hallucination.
It's not a hallucination.
Right, exactly. She's like really dead.
Now, let me ask you a question, man. Do you feel like the character of Emma was actually completely unnecessary in this movie? In
a way, yes. Because I felt like after that death, it was like, okay, see you later.
Yeah.
He actually... I think the Emil Hirsch was a little too like he was shooken up at first, but then he was just kind of like, okay, yeah, she's like,
yeah, it almost didn't even change anything.
It didn't, right? It didn't change anything.
There was enough like shit going. I actually felt more emotion when the cat
broke the cat's neck. Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, wow, he was gonna run away with this girl, and he didn't seem that upset when she got. Shouldn't
that girl have been killed way further to the end of the movie? Like, it was almost like the middle, like not the middle, it was a little past the middle, but like
it was in the last quarter of the film she got killed.
That would have been more shocking a death had it been towards the very end, I thought.
I think so too.
Right?
Yeah.
It was in a weird spot.
Yeah.
Because they went on, and then it was like it seemed like it wasn't even a part of the movie anymore. Like it just, I don't know, like he didn't give a shit. He gave a shit in like one scene afterwards, and then that was he was done with it. And
I'm going to bring up another point, is that her dying, like, what happens next, actually, is a heavier... It almost didn't matter that she was killed because of the ending, really.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And it's like, I feel like they added that, like some producer or whatever was like, you know what, man, we need, like, a love interest or some bullshit like that. I just think that the whole Emma thing, her entry into the movie, her part in the film was like, pretty, unnecessary. I mean, I guess, they wanted to talk about the bell on the foot and everything, but they could have done that a different way, I think, But yeah, it was just, I thought that was kind of unnecessary and kind of useless really in the film. And this is and I think that is really where I started checking out of the film a little bit in some ways. Because it was just like, I'm like, oh man, yeah, of course they killed her. Of course she came back.
Well, I wanted to see where it was going.
Yeah.
I knew the extra skin and the writings I knew it was going somewhere. And then, like, Austin says the corpse has been stopping them from finding out the truth, and they decide to go back to the examination room to, because they try to set the body on fire. The body won't even, like, they try to burn it, right? And that won't even work. And then... while that happens, after they try to set it on fire, Tommy is attacked in the smoke. And then, this is where they see that the brain tissue is still alive, basically, chronologically. And then when they look through the skin, they find this 1693, basically, and like Leviticus 16.
Yeah, it's like a biblical reference.
A biblical reference, Leviticus 20:27. The 1693 is the year, and Leviticus 20:27 is the passage. And of course, there's a Bible in the room, which is not far-fetched, not too far-fetched, but a little far-fetched. But and they look it up, and it is, of course, a passage about witches and about what to do, right? And basically, witches you should kill them. Basically, is the long and short of it. And then the father says to the son, Brian Cox says, "Well, witches never existed. In 1693, it was just hysterical girls. It was, which some people believe that to be true. That that it was just hysteria that led to them to be killed and blah blah blah. And then shit gets a little crazy again. So, I don't know, what does it say here? It says Tommy then sacrifices himself to the witch in the hope that she will not harm Austin. And then this is when the witch's body starts to heal itself.
Yeah, because what happens is like the spirit of the witch is the thing is I think that when he said that witches don't exist, they actually were hysterical women. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's his perception of it, but in reality, there were just these women practicing some sort of like pre-Christian religion,
right?
And they were persecuted, but. Mm-hmm. Be that as it may.
Well, they basically say, Brian, like this is her revenge. Like she was one of these women back in 1693, and this is her spirit and all this stuff is coming back as a means of revenge.
So she was like meting out all of the atrocities that were done to her. She was projecting them onto these living people. So so Brian Cox's character kind of, in a way, sacrifices himself in the attempt.
Yes, he starts getting the same injuries that she starts getting, like the broken limbs and like
the scorched lungs.
Yeah, it's pretty. That's pretty good scene, though. I have to say. And he basically dies, and then like the lights in the radio turn back on, and then you hear the police outside, like the sheriff.
It's like the next morning at this point.
Yeah. And, and he's like, Austin, Emil Hirsch is like, trying to get out. And the cop is saying, oh, you can open the cellar door now. And that turns out to be a hallucination as well. Yep. And then he turns around and it's the spirit of his dead father next to him. And then he's startled and he falls over this railing. And of course he dies.
Yeah.
And then the movie goes to basically, it looks kind of exactly what it looked like at the very beginning of the movie. Because what we didn't mention is that beginning scene, we never realized, we don't know what happened at that beginning scene. It was like a murder mystery scene unresolved.
Scene at the crime scene in the house.
Where they find the girl, Jane Doe. So basically what that turns out was probably the same exact thing that happened at the place where they're doing the autopsy, where her spirit was exacting revenge again and trying to break free, and she kills one family, and now she's killed yet another family. That's basically the gist of it. And it's like a beautiful sunny day, and then the cops come to where the autopsy house is, and it's the same kind of thing. There's no forced entry. And then it looks like, oh, these people are trying to get out. They died trying to get out, not in, blah, blah, blah. And then they another medical examiner, takes the body of the Jane Doe and moves her out. And then, of course, she moves her toe, and then you hear the bell and the movie's over.
Yeah.
That's, the gist of the movie.
I kind of had like mixed feelings about this movie, honestly. I mean, it's like, I thought I didn't think it was bad by any stretch. But the second third of the film, I didn't really care for, really. You know what I mean? It's like, it was a above average horror film.
It had good scares. Like I like when movies these days have kind of some interesting, jump scenes or whatever the hell they call it. It definitely had a few of those. But yeah, there's like a lot of hype on this as if it's like one of the greatest horror movies ever made. It's not a bad movie.
No, not at all.
But it's not one of the greatest horror movies ever made.
Nope.
And I don't know if it's the horror movie of the year?
No,
No
not
way.
even close.
No.
And the problem, I think that what I did like about it is I really didn't know how this was going to resolve.
Right.
But I just didn't like the resolution of it, actually.
Did you like that it went from being an autopsy movie into like, oh, it's about witches?
I love that.
I
I
like
thought that
that.
was great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of cool, actually. I didn't know that going in. I didn't know that at all.
Nope.
So I thought that was kind of cool. But I don't know. I felt like the ending was like a typical horror movie ending.
It was.
Right?
It was very like, let's wrap it up. Let's kind of put together some idea. Let's like leave it open ended. You know,
The bells sound and
bell- it
oh,
just-
the body's moving. Well,
I did.
Of course, the body's moving.
What I did like is that everyone got killed at the end.
Yeah, it had a downer ending, right?
Yeah,
it
there was
definitely
no-
did.
yeah, no
It
one
wasn't a happy
survived.
ending.
And that's why I feel like even having Emma in the movie at all was kind of pointless, really. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know. I don't know why that I'm stuck on her in the film, but the
Maybe to flesh out Emilio Hirsch's character a little bit and
yeah, but
show that he wanted out of the autopsy life. Maybe I don't know.
possibly, yeah,
He didn't want to do what his dad was doing. Yeah.
maybe, a little depth of the character.
But I mean, I liked the father and son.
Yeah,
I liked them. I didn't want to see them dead.
no, not at all.
So that was, you know.
But I feel like it was a very tidy wrap up to the film.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that they could have put a little bit more imagination into like the explanation of like what was actually going on.
Would you like it if they had maybe some of the witch scenes?
Yeah.
How she like showing how she died?
See,
maybe that would have been interesting.
That's what I'm saying. I think there could have been some flashbacks.
Yeah,
possibly,
yeah.
or
There was
could have
none of
been-
that. There was absolutely
know,
absolutely none of that. No.
Yeah, or they could have even gone a different direction, and she could have actually been like this malevolent spirit or something, or you know, maybe she actually was possessed by something, or you know, I think there could have been a different approach they could have done with the film at the end that would have made it a little more interesting for me.
And we don't know her name either. We don't know her name. I mean, she has a name.
Yeah.
But the Jane Doe thing is kind of cool, you know.
Yeah, totally.
So out of our 5.5 star rating that we do here on Necromaniacs podcast, what do you give Autopsy of Jane Doe, Mike?
I'll give it a 3.5.
3.5?
Yeah, it's not quite a 4, you know, 'cause for the reasons I said, but it wasn't a bad film by any stretch.
I'm inclined to give it the same score, maybe 3.75.
Okay.
Because, you know, it's a good horror movie, but again, I don't know if it's totally matching up to its hype.
No, definitely
know?
doesn't match the hype.
And yeah, I felt like they could have done a little more, like I said, maybe a little more backstory, you know, about the whole witch thing. But in a way, I guess part of its individuality is that it didn't do that. I don't know.
Yeah, I just feel like it was a little bit lazy in that aspect of it. You know.
All righty. We are moving on to the pits of hell here with the next film. Well, not really hell on earth maybe, but it's a Mexican horror film which came out in 2015 in Mexico, released on video in 2016 here in America on Unearthed Films, called Atroz. Atrocious is the English translation. What's the director's name?
Lex Ortega.
Lex Ortega, that's right. Kind of an up-and-coming director in the Mexican horror world. He did an installment in Mexico Barbaro that we saw. But I'll give a little, a fairly short summary of the film.
Also, it was produced by Ruggero Deodato.
Yes, it is worth noting, yes, that the Italian notorious man himself, Ruggero Deodato, was an executive producer on the film. And I will say his stamp of nastiness is in this film.
Oh, yeah.
A woman has been brutally struck down by a car, and the two drivers have been obtained by the police. The unorthodox commander-in-chief of the police decides to check out the assailant's car for himself and makes a gruesome discovery on a camcorder. The video recorder features the relentless torture and murder of a prostitute. The police decide to deal out some justice of their own, justice that would make these criminals cringe, by interrogating their perpetrators, and then they discover even more videotapes exposing them to more sexually deviant torture and murder. Would you say that is a good...
That's a very apt description of the
yes,
film.
it is.
Yeah.
Yes, that sets it up, right, Mike?
Yeah, totally, man. And it's important to note that the prostitute was a transgender prostitute.
transgender prostitute. And a little more backstory here as to how Mike and I came to find this movie from Rue Morgue magazine.
Yeah.
There was a mention of it in the gourmet section?
so,
Yes,
yeah. That would
maybe
make
about 3
sense.
issues ago. Me and Mike are big Rue Morgue fans, and we kind of read it cover to cover. And the way it was talked about was something that we could not just let go.
I'm like, this sounds like
This sounds
exactly what something we should be checking out.
Yes, and
investigating.
it sounds like the most over the top, disgusting movie ever. And I gotta say, Rue Morgue didn't let us down. It's pretty disgusting and pretty over the top.
Yeah, it's what comes to mind initially is August Underground.
100%. Yes. That movie has its big fans. The whole, the series has its champions and its detractors. I've seen all those movies one time total. That was enough for me. While I do not knock the existence of those movies and the need for people to check them out, and I don't knock the fans of those movies, I myself, as a horror fan, am not into that style of movie. I'm not saying it's bad or blah, blah, blah. It has nothing to do with any of that. It's just not really my cup of tea. And I like violence and I like gore, but that's not my thing.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
I mean, as a matter of fact, you loaned me the August Underground films,
Yep.
and I watched both of them together in succession.
Uh-huh.
And
The first one is definitely better than the second one. The first one is almost is kind of like interesting. It's like one of the first of its kind. Like almost felt it's almost
Yeah.
like an underground groundbreaker kind of movie that maybe every horror fan should kind of check out once, because it's amazing how they even did it. Like,
I totally think it's
Yeah.
worth watching
Yeah.
at least, definitely once.
Yes.
I would question your moral sort of like, how sound you are morally if you want to watch it more than once.
If you go, I watch it every month.
It's like,
Right.
yeah,
exactly.
that's my favorite
Yeah,
movie.
I mean,
It's like, it's not my cup of tea. I have seen it once, both of them, and I recognize its importance as a horror film.
Mm-hmm.
The same way there's been milestones of extremity over the last years. Like,
Yeah.
I Spit on Your Grave.
And we love the French films, and some of those get really over the top. Martyrs is over the
Martyrs.
top. It's different though. I don't know. I mean, some might say, what's the difference between August Underground and Martyrs? But there's a big
August
difference.
Underground didn't really have much of a story.
Right.
You know what I mean? However, I do think that it's an important film in the horror genre.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it has its place, absolutely. And I think that, it was a masterfully crafted special effects
Yes.
showcase.
Yes.
However, Atroz, I think, is similar to that, but it's not exactly the same, because there actually is, you could even argue to say that there's a social commentary going on in Atroz.
Yes. And what I'll get into is that there's way more money spent on Atroz than
Yes.
August Underground. Apparently, there's a $7 million budget. I don't know if it's $7 million. That's what was on IMDb. I'm debating $7 million, by the way. But it's higher production values. There's more characters. There's acting. There's a script.
Yeah.
And some of it, it was like Law and Order, SVU, on crack. Some
Yeah.
of it, right?
Yeah,
It's just
definitely.
it's got a police procedural and to it, and it's got a found footage angle to it, and it's just it gets really brutal. The very first scene with the transsexual prostitute made one friend of mine punch out after that scene, and this is one of my friends, huge black death metal fan guy, big horror guy, punched out. He goes, "Whoop," turned it off.
Yeah, it got into some very, very dark places in that.
It sure
scene.
did.
But but the one thing I'm going to say is that the film was really well edited and
Yes,
directed, though.
yes, and the music and the people who did it put a lot of care into it, and it's not treated like some it's treated with probably a little more care than the August Underground films, which almost meant to just look like these shitty tapes you found outside on the side of a highway.
Yeah.
That's not really what this is. Definitely notches above that style, right?
Absolutely. I mean, they're trying to make a film here.
It's a film.
You know,
right?
August Underground, we're trying to make a film, but they were trying to actually make just. All right, let's put it this way. In this movie, there's like a found footage component, and then there's like a wraparound. There's a storyline
Yeah.
that those found footage segments fit into that complete the narrative. The August Underground films are literally just those found footage segments
Correct.
without
Yes.
any real.
There's no
coherence.
wraparound.
Yeah.
There's no, it's
But
loose story.
The transitions, though, between the narrative of the real time versus the flashbacks of the found videotapes, I think was done really well in this.
Yes. There was, like I said, there's talent behind this movie. I think
Yeah.
Ortega, I'd like to see something else he does.
Yeah,
You
I
know
mean,
what I'm
Lex
saying?
Ortega is like, I want to see more films by him, and I enjoyed his entry into Mexico Barbero.
Barbero, yeah.
You know,
I
and
mean, again, there's all sorts of horror fans and who like all sorts of styles of stuff. And again, it's going to be weird for me to put a grade on this one, but I guess we could talk a little more about the story in the film.
Actually, what's interesting to know is Goyo, the actual perpetrator in this whole thing.
Yeah.
That's Lex Ortega.
Yes. Oh, he's a bruiser.
Yeah, he's like this kind of big, intimidating looking guy. Like looks like a like a death metal fan.
And it makes there's definitely a metalheady vibe contingent. And if you watch the extras, of course, one of the guys involved in the film is looks like a metalhead looking guy.
Yeah.
So there's definitely that component there. That wasn't a shock, But a little more about the film itself.
Yeah, I mean, originally, I was expecting it to be a straight up torture porn film, but it really was a lot more than that. Like I was saying, like after I watched this movie, I've only seen it one time. I can't bring myself to watch it again, but I was thinking about it, and I was just like, there was actually something here beyond just like scenes of violence.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of violence.
And I have to say, I mean, I don't, as far as the writing of the script, I mean, it says something about like abuse.
Yeah.
And violence towards women and violence towards transgender. There's a whole maybe other little thing going on here. No, I mean,
actually, just violence against like the kind of like lower level of society. You know what I mean? It's like, it's cops and villains and criminals. That's what the whole movie is made out of, really. And it's like, Goyo is like this a victim himself of abuse.
Right. We learned that.
And probably has as a result, and this is all shown in these videotapes. As a result of his abuse, he's probably turned into this
monster,
pathological, weirdo, and so yeah, I mean that's like basically the whole premise of the film is that, I mean, believe me, it was told gratuitously. I mean, the scenes that they show in this thing are.
Yeah, like I gotta be. Look, man, I know some of our listeners are really gonna want to see this after the descriptions you and I are giving. Some are gonna probably opposite it, but just brace yourself and even do more research than even listening to what me and Mike are saying.
I mean,
watch the trailer. You can watch the trailer. Read some more reviews on it. This is not for everybody.
No.
It's for the more adventurous and more kind of. I can hang with this kind of horror fan, where I can't believe I'm kind of giving a pre-warning on our podcast to our fans, but I feel like I have to.
Yeah, I mean, I felt the same way too. There were times where I was like, man, I don't know if I want to, how much more of this I really want to subject myself to.
Yes.
But it's like, but I watched this to the end, and I'm glad I did. But there's like, tons of, there's
heinous things.
Heinous.
And the effects, though, I gotta say, man, they spent money on them. I mean, the acting, whatever, is almost doesn't really matter, but they spent money on the effects. The effects look good. And like I said, I think that Lex Ortega has a future in horror and in filmmaking. I'll say that.
So they apprehend these guys, and one of them is Goyo, who is
Goyo,
Lex Ortega, and they discover where these other, the crime scene where they actually, tortured the prostitute, and that's where they discover all these films.
Yes.
And basically, all his videotapes document all of his atrocities to various different people. One of them being the stripper. And,
Yeah. That was an interesting scene.
yeah. Well, there's a couple of scenes with her because at
Yeah.
first he's like, like some of
There's
you
like
out
a dirty
there.
sex scene with
Yeah,
her.
it's a
and then
dirty
it
sex
turns,
scene.
takes a dark turn.
Yeah. Some of you guys out there have got your wings, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
This will be for you.
Oh boy, yes.
If you enjoy
yeah,
a woman.
yeah, it goes there. That's what I'm going to say.
You know.
It goes there.
And that's like not a bad thing. And this guy is a little too zealous about the blood component of earning your wings. If you follow what I'm saying.
That's what we're going to say.
So there's a scene that incorporates that,
Mm-hmm.
and then a second scene where he's like bummed out that there's no blood.
Yeah.
So he makes his own blood.
Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah.
It's bad. Yeah.
And so I mean there's stuff like that in this movie, So it's basically an accounting of all of this guy's atrocities.
Yeah.
And
Hence the title.
Hence
Yes.
Atroz.
Yeah.
And and then we discover his past. The abuse of his parents and his father, and
Yes, he himself was raped and abused, and oof. Yeah, pretty brutal.
The rape scene. There's a sodomy scene, an
It's
extreme sodomy scene.
Realistic. I mean,
Yeah.
it's very, unflinching. Is that the word? Yes, unflinching. Woo.
And and then we discover there's like some incest involving his sister, some incestuous feelings, and then there's a twist at the end too.
Yes, when he's at the jail.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of closes.
Someone from earlier on gets their revenge.
Yeah, so there's like a revenge component too as well.
But here's the kicker: they don't show that one.
That's the one they don't show. They leave that to your imagination.
Yeah,
which is
that they
ironic.
don't show. What you probably want to see to make yourself feel 5% better, they don't show it at the very. Want to just say what it is? Or
Yeah, go ahead.
it like well, now wait a minute. Here's something. Is that one of the is that the transsexual prostitute, or isn't the person dead?
No, it's his sister.
It's the okay, right.
His sister shows up at the end.
That's right.
She's all like, got cornrows, and she looks like she's on,
Yeah, she looks like you can't fuck with her.
Yeah, she looks like Chris Cyborg or something like that from like the UFC or whatever.
Yeah, yes,
She shows
yes.
up
She
like
looks like a UFC
Looks
fighter.
like
Yeah,
an MMA fighter, and she like takes her revenge out on this guy.
yes. And they give it, what is that? They hand her like a blade or like a weapon, like a.
Yeah, they're just like, here, man,
Here
go
you
to
go.
town.
Go
your
ahead.
thing.
Yeah,
And so there's like some retribution at the end, and but it's like, it's one of those things. Do I, if you ask me, would you say that you liked this movie? I would have a hard time saying I liked it.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
However, I feel like it's actually another step in the evolution of that style of film, though.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's true because I hadn't heard of anything else in the August Underground. Anyone kind of, hey, let's take this and throw some money into it.
Yeah.
And some people would argue, well, why even fucking bother doing that? But why not? Why not? Like film, you should do whatever the hell you want in film. No, I really believe that. In horror films, you should be able to do whatever the hell you want. And in Mexico, they really believe that. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I don't know that in America, this movie would have gotten, I mean, sure, somebody could have made this movie with their own funding, their buddies, like, you know what I'm saying? Look, you could do anything here, right? But I feel like the fact that it came out of there is really cool and interesting in a way. Because now I feel like maybe someone here will kind of take that, you know what I'm saying, and like run with it.
Well, there isn't the spotlight on Mexican filmmaking as there is in America and in Europe. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, there's a, we're more in the United States. There's more of a showcase for filmmaking, but down there you're these renegades.
No, it's yeah.
And
I mean,
at least that's my impression of it.
Right. And obviously, there's a big horror scene down there. It's funny if you watch the extras on this really kind of extravagant DVD set Unearthed Films put together. It's a 3-discer.
Yeah.
For the price of one, you're getting the movie on Blu-ray with the extras, the movie on DVD with the extras, and then the soundtrack on a 3-disc set, which normally for a movie like this, you'd get you certainly wouldn't have a 3-disc set, right?
Definitely
But
not.
Unearthed Films did a nice job. I'll say that. But if you watch it, you get to watch this behind-the-scenes stuff, and everybody behind the scenes of this movie seem like these nice, happy people. And you watch the crowdfunding thing, and everybody's all happy and excited. And there's there's this young, pretty woman who's one of the producers. Producers? What? It's just like, what is going on here? Like, but you know what though? Maybe they like their horror. This is how they like their horror, right? I mean, not everybody is so afraid or like inhibited. I mean, this is not for everybody.
Yeah.
Yet the people behind this, it was like, let's make this slapstick comedy. Like that was the vibe I got from the behind the scenes. It's kind of funny.
I mean, and that's the point I'm trying to make is that it's like, the same way that I'm a huge G.G. Allen fan.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And people think, well, that's garbage. That's not even music. But to me, it is. To me,
Yeah.
it's like an extreme version of stuff. It's like there's a valid thing going on with G.G. Allen, and I feel like this is like a valid expression of something, and that even though it's not pleasant to watch by any stretch of the imagination, there was some like creative energy putting into it, and that I feel like it's an important entry into that subgenre of horror films, and I'm not even saying that's something I don't necessarily gravitate towards that type of horror myself, but I feel like it's, I appreciate it, just
right. Like we don't know how in the annals of horror, how this movie's going to be remembered. We don't even know, I don't even know how big it is at this point. Like I got that Rue Morgue thing, and I feel like me and you are the only people talking about this fucking movie. So I don't really know who this movie has reached. But I like that it exists, and I
totally.
like that people are pushing the envelope.
Oh yeah.
And running with it.
Well, it's the same way you and I were big black metal and death metal fans, and it's like we like when bands push it. We like bands that go extreme with their sound.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I feel that this film is like an extreme, like a push into the more extreme world of filmmaking. And it's like, but there's an actual coherent storyline, and I like, the editing was done really well, and the production and all that sort of stuff.
Now,
so.
what kind of grading system would you put this movie in?
All
I almost feel like it's like a 2-pronged one.
Yeah.
Because technically, to me, this movie is like a 1 in some ways. Not technically. I mean, like in like the overall enjoyment of it, right? Like I didn't enjoy this movie really. Like I didn't really enjoy watching it. I won't watch it again. But I would like other people to see it.
Yes.
And I respect how it was made. So there's like two things at play.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I totally follow what you're saying, and I'm gonna go ahead and say that like I didn't enjoy the film at all, but I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. Because like exactly what you said, it's not enjoyable at all. It's not a pleasant film. There's nothing. You're kind of wincing the whole time you're watching it, but it's like
you might throw up actually.
Yeah, you might be disgusted by this movie, but I feel like like I said before, just like in the overall genre of horror films and extreme horror, and even though this isn't my cup of tea, I feel like this movie pushes things in a direction that's like a positive direction, like as far as filmmaking goes.
In that sense, I'll give it a 3. I'll give it a nice neutral number because again, I respect its existence and its artistic value, even though some might say it has no artistic value.
Oh yeah,
I think it has.
Too,
It does have artistic value.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think Roger Ebert would throw this movie out of a window and piss on it, but I'm not Roger Ebert. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who is?
Exactly. All right. Now we're gonna do something old. We haven't done something this old in a while. Cleanse the palate a little bit. From a man I think has one of the absolute greatest directorial records ever, and that is David Cronenberg,
Oh yeah.
the king of Canada. but he's not just the king of Canada. I think he is a horror king. He's a movie king, in my opinion. He's amazing. His run of movies is in some ways even better than Carpenter's run of movies.
100%, dude.
It's longer. Who had a better 70s and 80s than David Cronenberg?
Well, I mean, David Cronenberg is still kicking it.
And
know?
that a better 70s and 80s and a better 2000s.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's kind of out of the horror genre.
No, he's out of it now. But what he's like.
But as a director, though.
Oh yeah, but like, you go to even like Eastern Promises and History of Violence.
Yep.
Those are great, great movies. They're not horror movies.
No.
They're great fucking movies. He's a great director. But when he was churning out horror movies, man, whoo, unstoppable.
I'm gonna make a bold statement that I actually enjoy his films better than John Carpenter's.
Wow, interesting.
I do. I mean, I feel like
They're
they
different.
hold up
They're
better.
different.
They're much different. You know, Carpenter's Halloween was great. The Thing, you know, those are like kind of like high points of his
Two of my
career.
faves, yeah.
You know, They Live is great.
Mm-hmm. Escape from New York.
Escape from New York, Prince of Darkness.
Precinct 13.
Yep.
Now he's got a great run. We just churned out a bunch of his run.
But I just feel like Cronenberg's,
like Rabid, The Brood, Scanners, Videodrome, The Fly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm forgetting some right now. Those 5 popped into my head right away, but those 5 are fucking fantastic. There's oh my God. I don't have my iPod with me tonight, but you go on his IMDb and you're gonna look at his movies, and if you're a real horror guy, you're gonna go, holy shit.
Yeah.
Mike and Mike are right. He has almost 10 in a row of great movies. Not many directors do 10 great movies
Absolutely, in a row. You know, but I also feel like as films though, his directorial abilities are a little bit better than John.
Originality too.
Yeah.
He's a weird guy who makes weird movies, and he's just I would freak out if I ever met him. Actually, I would bug out. But we're going to 1979's The Brood here, everybody. It came out in America on May 25th, 1979. In Canada, June 1st, 1979. Like almost all of Carpenter's films, this was shot in Canada, and it starred the amazing Oliver Reed with Samantha.
Man.
Oh, what a great guy! The Wild Man himself, Oliver Reed, and Samantha Egger and Art Hindle. Art Hindle's a guy who played the husband. He's been in like 8,000 movies. He does the horror con circuit. He's been in some cool stuff as well. Rough summary here. The film follows a man uncovering an eccentric psychologist's therapy techniques on his institutionalized wife amidst a series of brutal murders committed from an offspring of mutant children that coincides with the investigation. And I must say that the music was a Howard Shore score. Mm-hmm. Very awesome. Initially, this movie did not do well. It was kind of panned.
Your boy Ebert.
He didn't like it. Oh, of course. Yeah, he hated this
He
movie.
thought it was like unwatchable.
Thought it was terrible. However, it is now, like a lot of movies from the 70s and 80s, man, this movie is like celebrated, and it is seen much more favorably now.
Yeah.
And it should be, because it is a good movie and it makes you think, and it's kind of got that vibe that me and Mike really like, that late 70s, early 80s, just dark kind of like bizarre vibe to it.
Oh, definitely.
That it's so hard to put into words what that vibe is.
Well,
you know what that vibe is
the vibe
if you're a
of the
fan.
late 70s and early 80s was like you actually saw like real people in films. You know what I mean? It wasn't like there's some dude like shredded abs is like the doctor.
That's part of it.
You know?
Yes,
Like,
it was very real.
Yeah.
People looked like back.
Yeah.
Like there was a very realistic look to the way actors were, and I think the acting craft might have been better. No, I'm gonna more
go with that.
believable, more like, I don't know, just something about it. This the suffering and the dramatic aspects of that era, I felt were very real, and there's just something kind of hard to duplicate about that.
Yeah, I mean, and like what film encapsulates that the most is the French Connection, man. Like those films, you know, from that with Gene Hackman.
And that's earlier in the 70s.
Well,
yeah.
that's right, but I mean, like the 70s.
That era is
itself.
that era.
Is like Gene Hackman is like the quintessential 70s actor. Like he looks like just like some dude that would be your neighbor or something.
Yeah.
You know, he's like just some guy.
Yep.
And that's like what I feel like is missing in this day and age. You know what I mean? It's like they don't look like real people, the actors in films.
And even say like The Exorcist from like 73.
Yeah.
Pretty much everybody in that movie was great.
Believable.
Everybody,
They're
the
very
cop,
believable.
like every
Damien.
character in that. Yes, everybody was awesome in that movie. You know what I'm saying? And you don't really, I don't know. I feel like you don't get that anymore. You get like one really good actor and 5 pretty people. No, like
Realism is lost these days in American films because everyone, they want perfection. Like it's like, all the dudes like are like cut weight and take steroids to like look, everyone's like ripped and like chiseled and everything. And it's just that's not what
it's all
real
about
people
looks.
look like.
Too much looks. Way too much about looks, and
It's like the actual realism gets lost, and
yeah. And Oliver Reed, it's funny. We were saying before the podcast started, he was only 41 at the time of this movie, and if you watch the movie, this man looks about 53 years old. I don't know. People just looked just different. They looked older. I feel like even younger people looked older back then.
Well, a lot of people. I mean, back in the day in the '70s, smoking and drinking were huge.
Oh yeah, that's all everybody's doing is smoking and drinking, including in this movie. There's a lot of drinking and smoking in this movie. Yes,
and that ages you prematurely.
Yes,
no one like took care of himself like they do now. Like people,
I think that's why we look a bit younger now.
Yeah, probably.
But back to the plot. Psychotherapist Hal Raglan, which is Oliver Reed, runs the Soma Free Institute, which is great. It's a very Cronenberg name.
Yep.
The Soma Free Institute, where he performs a technique called psychoplasmics. Another great fucking Cronenberg word, psychoplasmics, Mike. I love it. Which encourages patients with mental disturbances to let go of their suppressed emotions through a series of physiological changes to their bodies. That right off the bat screams David Cronenberg. It's John Carpenter. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Like, he was all about the mind and the body, right?
Oh yeah, totally.
This weird, no other director can touch this kind of shit,
He's kind of the father of body horror.
Yes, exactly. 100%.
Did he do Dead Ringers too?
Yes, that's the other one. I forgot that one. Yes.
Yeah, Dead Ringers.
I was rattling off the movies. That was one of the ones I forgot, Dead Ringers. And one of his patients is Nola Carveth, who's played by Samantha Eggar. She's a severely disturbed woman who is legally embattled with her husband, Frank, played by Art Hindle, for the custody of their daughter, Candace, the little blonde girl. Frank discovers bruises and scratches all over Candace's body following a visit with Nola. He informs Raglan of his intention to stop the visitation rights. This movie is it's weird right off the bat, first of all. We don't really know what the hell's even wrong with the mom, Samantha Eggar, and what the hell's going on at this bizarre institute. And you got this poor husband trying to just see his kid. Like, he's like a normal guy.
Yep.
And I don't know. I'm kind of like, you're drawn in pretty easily, I feel like, in this movie,
Yeah. And also, listen, if you listen to this podcast and you haven't seen this movie,
you got to see it.
You turn this off right now.
Yeah,
and
we're gonna
watch the movie.
Yeah, we're gonna go.
We're gonna, you're better. Your time is better spent watching this movie rather than listening to us talk about it if you haven't seen it already.
Some people, it's slow and blah blah blah. If you don't like movies of this era, I think you're gonna think every fucking movie is slow from this era.
Well, all movies from that era are pretty slow, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like that movie Le Mans, like with Steve McQueen.
Mm-hmm.
There's like no talking in the movie for like fucking 10 minutes or some shit.
But to me, this movie starts off cool. He's talking to that crazy guy in the
that
institute,
opening scene,
and it's like
intense.
the abuse. He's like the very abusive kind of like the opening scene is great, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he's he wants to stop the visitation rights to the bizarro fucking school, and then Raglan begins to intensify the treatments, of course, in the therapy sessions, since the husband wants to pull the woman out. And then you kind of learn that there's a lot more fucked up shit going on. Samantha Eggar's mom, who we meet, alcoholic, who was abusive to her as a kid.
Yeah.
A lot of abuse.
There's a lot of abuse in this film.
Mental and physical abuse, to me, is what this movie is about, actually.
Yeah.
And the manifestation of mental and physical abuse. That's what this fucking movie's about.
That's exactly what it's about. Because what happens later is an actual physical embodiment.
Every time something goes wrong to the Samantha Eggar character, Nola, these bizarre little creatures.
Sexless gremlins.
These fucked up little, I don't even know what to call them, kill people that are involved in her life.
Yep.
And it's just so weird. Like that first scene when you first see them when they kill the mother, the grandmother of Candace. It's like, what the fuck? Like, imagine seeing this back then, and there's this thing in a kitchen up on a shelf that jumps down and smashes the old woman to death.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a crazy scene. But what these things are manifestations of hate and abuse. That's what you learn.
Yeah.
That's the gist of the movie. Because people like read reviews, and they're like, where do they come from? And it's so stupid that they're just walking around, blah, blah. It's like, no, dude, this is Cronenberg. These are, you know what I'm saying? You kind of like, you can't take everything so literal and like, you know what I'm saying? You have to just kind of roll with it in a way, no? Because it is a bizarre concept, but I think it's a cool concept. It's manifestations of hate, you know? And evil and abuse and anger and frustration. And that's what all this is. They're kind of birthed out of the woman.
They literally are, actually.
Yeah, and that's fucking awesome. That's great.
You know, and it's like like I said, Mike and I both said, there's always all of Cronenberg's films have to do with like the body somehow being modified by either the mind or some sort of external force, like biology being shifted somehow.
Like Rabid had to do with sexuality and almost like sexual disease and promiscuity.
Yeah.
And Videodrome has to do with sex again, kind of a bit different, but in like the video age and in just the kind of the newer age that we were living in the 80s and not the 70s, you know, Videodrome, and like the mind and it just, everything is very heady and trippy and like, whoa kind of shit with Cronenberg. If you're not into that, I could maybe if you like just slasher movies, or you like Freddy Krueger, maybe this isn't for you. But if you have like a bigger palette and like can kind of appreciate what I think is the fucking genius behind all this shit,
totally,
then these movies are great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge Cronenberg fan. I love all of his films.
We could do a whole thing about his other movies. I mean, I wouldn't mind. I mean, just to me, rewatching these movies is a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. I have a lot of these on. Isn't there a Criterion version of Videodrome?
Yes, I have it. I have one. Yeah. It's. I mean, shit. I actually, even just talking about it now, I'd like to watch it again. It's been a little while. Some great performances in it.
Videodrome is probably my favorite of his.
It's definitely one of The Fly, man. I don't own The Fly. I need to own The Fly. I haven't seen that in so long. That's one of his biggest hits, actually. But anyway, murders keep occurring. The first one being the grandmother Juliana, and then her husband comes into town after her death, and we learn that he wasn't abusive, but he did nothing about the abuse.
Yeah, he just kind of stood by, witnessed it.
But he's got to go, though. So he dies. And then there is a teacher at the preschool where the daughter goes to school, and she's kind of getting a little friendly with the Art Hindle character, and they become friends. And, well, no, she's got to go, too. Like, pretty much anybody that kind of comes into contact with this woman
to get dealt with
is dealt with by the little monsters, we'll call them. And like I said, like I bet you it was I mean, probably some people obviously liked it back then, but I think it was almost a little ahead of its time, right?
Well, because I think I think people still are a little uncomfortable with like kids and violence, but for sure in 1979 that was like almost a taboo kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. But like, Variety back then, like an extremely well-made but unpleasant shocker. Leonard Maltin, big movie guy back then, hated it, insulted it. Egger eats her own afterbirth with midget clones, beat grandparents, and lovely young schoolers to death with mallets. That's his review of the movie. Ebert did not like this movie at all. But, again, you flash forward to now, and it was number 88 on the Chicago Film Critics Association's 100 Scariest Movies of All Time. And in 2004, it was number 78 in the 100 Scariest Movie Moments on the Bravo channel. Like it's got a lot of respect, actually.
Yeah.
And then it's got its Criterion, Brutus Criterion.
I didn't realize
along with Scanners. They both got it. Yeah, it came out in 2015. Actually, the Criterion of the Brood. I have the old school MGM one, which it's even cooler to watch on the bare bones early 2000s DVD because it doesn't look as good as the Criterion DVD.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought
I
that's
have
kind
it
of
on
cool.
VHS.
Oh, yeah,
which is
okay, awesome.
shittier,
Yeah.
completely shitty.
You know, and like, I don't know. I'm very partial to this era. Maybe it's my age. Maybe it's our age. Who the fuck knows? I mean, I know other people who are a little older, a little younger than me that also obviously appreciate this whole era of film. And, you know, Oliver Reed, how could you not appreciate that guy? He was probably drunk throughout most of the goddamn movie.
He probably smelled like booze the whole time.
Yeah, he did. There's a great little story about how while making the movie in Canada, one night he was literally going to all the bars in the area after a shoot in his underwear to see how many bars he could go to in his underwear, getting hammered. I mean, come on. I mean, who does that? Nobody does that.
How can you not like that guy?
Oh, so great.
You know?
But again, I mean, you know, we've pretty much run through the movie. I mean, I don't want to give like the ending away. The ending is kind of like a cool, crazy ending.
Yeah.
The husband is trying to get his daughter back after all these people have died. And the fucking Raglan Oliver Reed finally realizes this whole shit has to stop. All the fucking deaths and all the crazy shit. Okay. He kind of teams up with the husband, who they were kind of against each other at one point. And they kind of, the whole idea is to just grab the daughter and bring her to safety. And like she kind of reveals herself to her ex-husband with all these like fucking weird like red markings all over her body, and has like one of the little monsters about to pop on her side.
Yeah,
it's a really great kind of sick looking, you know, Cronenberg moment. And then she takes it and licks all the blood off. I mean, it's a fucking great scene. And while that's going on, Raglan Oliver Reed is trying to grab little Candace away from all these monsters. It's another really cool scene because they're all sleeping and they're surrounding her. And with each, as she's getting more and more upset at her husband, each little monster is waking up. And they're getting angrier. And they fucking pounce Oliver Reed and they kill him while the little girl gets to escape. And then finally, Art Hindle, you know, kills Samantha Egger. But once he kills her, it kills all the little monsters.
So it's almost there, you know, even when I first saw this when I was a kid, it almost felt like there was like a vampire kind of vibe to it, where like this sort of like, you know, they were doing the bidding of like a master somehow.
Yes.
You know, not straight up vampires, but the same way where like Dracula has like his minions of like, you know, vampires going out into the world.
They were doing the bidding of her. She didn't necessarily have to tell them to do this, but it's what she wanted. These people dead. She wanted her mother dead. Desire. She wanted her father dead. Yeah. She wanted the school teacher dead. So, and they were doing it because they knew that that's what she wanted. They were her children in essence, but they weren't her children. They were all the manifestations of all the horrible things that happened to her. So think about that. Imagine there's like, it'd be an interesting kind of update now for a movie.
I do hope they never remake it.
No, not a remake, but say here's the plot. Yeah. There's a woman who was sexually abused as a kid and beaten as a kid, who becomes an adult, and somehow, for whatever crazy Cronenberg reason or whatever, all of those things manifest physically, and like she gets the revenge on all years later, all those people that did all those horrible things to her. Like I can just kind of picture that kind of like idea for a movie.
Sure.
You know, maybe not via little munchkins, maybe via something else, you know what I'm saying, as the killers, like another method of the revenge. Maybe it's her herself doing it, who the fuck knows. But in essence, it's kind of revenge. That's really what it really is. But this took a whole other, you know, aspect.
It's revenge, but like it's more subtle than that though, too. It's not like, you know, like I Spit in Your Grave where she goes and kills all these dudes who raped her, but it's more like, you know, more subtle, like kind of chronic abuse that happened, and that being like this like darker subconscious desire for her to like not even like just to straight up kill him.
Well, the teacher didn't do a damn thing to her, so we have to keep that in mind.
Perceived infraction, like a jealousy, like a weakness or something. You know, it was like, that's why this movie is so interesting to me, at least, is that there's all this like, you know, kind of emotional stuff going on in the movie, you know, and it's creepy too. Like these little fucking creeps running around, man. They're like these like weirdo, sexless.
And they're all wearing like these winter outfits.
Yeah, it's all kid onesies.
Because it's freezing outside. The movie takes place in the winter. All these little creatures are wearing snowsuits.
Yeah,
very strange. So what are we giving The Brood?
Oh, 5 out
A
of
5
5.
out of
man.
5.
You
Come
know,
on,
what else could we give
absolutely.
it?
This is a great movie. You have to see it. If you haven't seen The Brood, check it out. If you don't like it, you're crazy.
Yeah, 70s. That was the best era, really. I mean,
Yeah.
70s and like the slasher movies of the 80s.
I would say mid 70s, mid 80s is the best. Like honestly, like or maybe even early 70s, mid 80s, because early 70s you have like The Exorcist and other winners, but that's definitely my favorite era. 70s, 80s, 90s was terrible.
90s was terrible. The only movie that stuck out is Event Horizon.
That's at the end of the 90s, and then some people still selling that story of the first Scream is really good. No, it's really not really good. It's not really good.
Not if you're a horror fan.
No,
if you're just some like basic
pop culture
dude out there. Yeah, sure. But like
you know what? I saw it and I think I liked it then.
Yeah.
But about 2-3 years later, I was like, I could care less about these fucking
like
movies.
like Shaun of the Dead, as far as horror comedy, kills it. I mean, Shaun of the Dead.
Oh yeah,
is
it's
like
way better movie.
I mean,
and then almost everything in the 2000s kills Scream. All the great stuff that happened in the 2000s. Come on.
And I think that horror is like a hit or miss thing these days, though, at least in the United States. I think that there's definitely some promising stuff going on, but like by and large, the last 15 years of remakes has really, really taken a big step back as far as quality goes.
While horror didn't do very well in the big picture in the 90s, some interesting things did happen. Della Morte, Della More.
Yeah.
I actually think
Yeah, Della Morte,
Argento's the smaller films,
Yeah, but these are
Stendhal
European-
Syndrome and
European
yes,
stuff, yeah.
European stuff, smaller shit. Absolutely, I think did good. Hellraiser 3 was 92. Look, it ain't the best movie, but I definitely enjoyed it back in 92. I feel like after that, it was like, oof, up until like 99, 2000. Up until like 99, when Anchor Bay started unleashing everything Fulci and Argento into America in home video, 98, 99, that's when things started to change. And by 2000s, it was like, boom, a lot of things started to change. DVD helped horror. DVD fucking really saved horror. 100% I believe that. The transition from the VHS era to the DVD era was unbelievable because it brought everything into availability that was fucking 10th generation shitty edited VHSs into pristine uncut DVDs. It was fucking great,
Yeah.
Totally.
Man, you remember buying VHS tapes?
Yes, in my first convention visits, I was still buying VHS tapes. And again, it was right at the tail end. I probably shouldn't even been buying them, but I just didn't have the DVD player in the home yet. And then finally, by 2000, I got the goddamn DVD player in the house. So, but in 98, 99, I was still buying friggin' VHS tapes.
Do you think Blu-rays are really? I mean, I have a few Blu-rays, but
Yeah.
I'm not crazy about the Blu-ray.
I don't care. I think to me, although Blu-ray is the final frontier, DVD is just fine. I am in no need to upgrade everything to Blu-ray.
No.
I do own a bunch of Blu-rays, but DVD is just fine. I think to me that is the final resting place of home entertainment until something else happens. But it's been a good couple of years already. What the fuck else are they going to put out? I mean, physical sales are at a certain level as it is. You mean to tell me they're going to introduce another?
Nah,
No, I think I actually think Blu-ray is really going to be it.
Yeah, streaming, like people downloading shit and like that whole thing.
But what's funny is the return to being into VHS and vinyl at a time when you're really not even supposed to be into them because there's all these other, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's how I know that this is the final thing.
VHS though, bro, is like a really fucking inferior way of watching
like
movies.
I look, it's cool. Knock yourself out. Buy your old VHS tapes on eBay. Have a great VHS collection. I could care less.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Me personally, I don't. Yeah. I'm long done.
Yeah, vinyl I love, but like VHS tapes, no,
yeah,
man, I'm not gonna go there.
I don't
it's
buy.
Like listening to a cassette, like a straight up.
Yeah, it's my least favorite format for music is cassette. My least favorite format for film is VHS. I'm good.
It's like having an 8-track or some shit. It's like why there was a reason why that shit's outdated.
And I know we're upsetting some horror fans because VHS is, I don't want to upset anybody. It's just not our thing. VHS,
I like quality.
Yeah, and you know, having to lug 5 million VHS tapes in a move is probably the last thing I'd ever want to do.
Yeah.
You know, I'm annoyed that I have to lug DVDs in a move and CDs that I have too many of.
Oh,
So
man. I'm trying to sell shit these days.
yeah,
Actually.
I mean, but yeah, the vinyl thing. As a result of the vinyl boom, I have to say, I've got a lot of vinyl. So, especially with horror soundtracks, I have quite a few. I enjoy it. You know.
Oh yeah, man.
Looks nice, sounds nice.
You know what I recently saw, which just came out on Blu-ray, is Crimes of Passion.
Ooh, I'd like to check that out.
Yeah, it's good.
I haven't seen that in ages. I used to watch that. I used to like sneak watch that as a kid because my
Pretty
dad
dirty.
had it, and it was like a filthy movie. You know,
Yeah,
when I was a
very
kid.
dirty.
Yeah, it's a cool movie.
I saw that back in the '80s, but like it was like unavailable, like on
Yeah,
any
yeah, it was.
format
It was. Hmm.
until like a month ago. And yeah, I have the Blu-ray of that, and it's really cool, man. I kind of hope they do that. You know, like Death Waltz or somebody puts out the score.
I don't
score's
remember that music.
interesting,
I mean,
man.
I have not seen that since I was a young lad, so I would like to see it again.
It's it's a lot more artsy than I remember it. You know what I mean? It's like it gets
Lynchy kind of.
a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. It takes place in I remember it taking place in New York City, but it actually doesn't.
Is it L.A.?
It takes place in anywhere. It's
Okay.
like any town, USA, suburbs versus the urban world, the sleazy urban world. And Kathleen Turner's in it.
Yeah, that's when she was pretty hot back then.
Oh yeah, dude, Kathleen Turner, man, in like Body Heat.
Body Heat, yes, that was in the Body Heat and Crimes of Passion were two of my dad's favorites.
Yeah.
And they were dad movies. Dad would watch them when everybody was asleep, and I would sneak downstairs. I had to get some water or go to the bathroom. I'd be like, he's watching those movies.
Yeah. Body Heat is more, sort of film noir,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
steamy, whatever. And Crimes of Passion kind of got lumped in with a lot of those films, but it's a way different type of movie. It's like way artsier, and there's like a surreal kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, I definitely want to see that again.
Yeah, I mean, anyone out there, most likely a lot of people haven't even seen it because it's been unavailable for
For years. Yeah, it's funny. It was always when I go to the cons, there's a certain section that has the DVDs on DVD-R that are not available.
Yeah, like
because
bootlegs.
Bootleg only, and
call
that's
them
always been one of them. Right, exactly. Yes, exactly. I believe they're called bootlegs.
Yeah. In the
Because it
biz.
was, but in a way, I especially like a bootleg when it is from something that, because sometimes people make bootlegs of shit you can fucking get.
Yeah.
It's
that's
best to
kinda
have a bootleg that you can't get. You know what I'm saying? Right.
like Hardware.
Right.
Hardware for like a million years was like unavailable, and I have a bootleg of that too. Then it got
Yep.
re-released.
And now it's unavailable again.
And now it's
Unbelievable.
unavailable, yeah.
Isn't that crazy? Same for Delamorte Delamore. By the way. I
Really?
think you can't get it. No, I don't think you can get it right now.
Fuck, dude.
Good thing I bought all these in the 2000s.
I
There's a
have-
bunch of movies I bought in the 2000s that I'm very surprised to see gone. They're
So
long gone.
Delamorte Delamore was released on Blu-ray
And DVD.
and
No, DVD.
Only on DVD.
I don't know if it had Blu-ray. No, I
And
don't
it
know
never.
about
And
that.
now it's gone.
I think it's gone again. Yes, the license went up again. I have to double check
Shit.
that. I'm pretty sure.
That
At least
would
in
have.
America.
I still. All I have is a VHS copy of that, man. And that's. I've been wanting to have a legit version of
And
that.
several Argentos that got their reissues again have fallen through the wayside. Some of the later ones are unavailable again. So it's shit
And
happens.
like the Cemetery Man edited that is no good of Delamorte Delamore.
Yeah, it's missing a bunch of shit. It is.
Mostly a lot of the nudity with
The sex scenes.
the
Yeah,
sex
yeah.
and Anna Fauci.
Mm-hmm. Oh, she's
which,
great.
Which is like, just that alone right there isn't. You need to have that in the movie.
So, say a little bit. Speaking of Italian stuff, the Suspiria is going to happen sometime later this year. And I then read recently that one of the actresses in it said, "Well, it's not a remake,
Oh,
but
God.
it is a remake.
the
What is? How could she say? It's the plot is it's a girl goes to a ballet school and finds this. What do you mean it's not a remake? How is it not a remake? I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm looking forward to it. Actually, I'm kind of have some high hopes for it. But why would you say, well, it's not a remake? Yes, it is a remake.
Well, what's the? Why are you looking forward to it? Like, what's the lowdown
Well,
on that?
It's got some interesting actresses in it, and it's got the original actress in it who played Susie Bang. Like it's got some interesting people behind it. That's kind of why. Am I expecting it to be as as awesome? No. But I understand the need for someone to kind of take something like that and say, well, everybody jocks this movie. It's 30-something years old. Let's see what we can do with it now. Like, I understand the need for remakes, like I do in the studio, Hollywood sense. A lot of times it's blows, don't get me wrong. But sometimes they turn out to be okay. I mean, I don't know. I just go in with an open mind. And I think the best movies that should be remade are movies that had a lot of flaws that could be remade better, or movies that were just, that was okay. You know what I'm saying? Or like maybe like some of the lesser Argento, the lesser Fulci. Somebody could take some of those plots and make movies today with them, and some of them could turn out really good.
Okay.
Suspiria is one of his marquee films.
Yeah.
So it is a bit of a risk. It's riskier.
Big risk, yeah.
So, and it's still the same name. It's like, to say it's not a remake is really silly when it actually is a remake. I think there's going to be things changed about it. Yeah. But come on. Anyway.
Well, that's it, man.
Yes, this was a good one. Yeah. We had been about 2 months, and we have some plans to come back, sooner, because we live a bit of a distance from each other. So we might do the next one with me via Skype, perhaps, to kind of bang one out sooner.
Yeah, I think that'd be cool to have like a monthly release of one of these. And there's plenty of things to talk about, man. There's
totally.
All kinds of stuff, and then the website will be launching in another month or so. I would say, safely.
Necromaniacs podcast website, baby.
Yeah, and that'll have some writing on it and different stuff. So just hang tight, stay tuned.
And for those out there, remember we have a Facebook page, Necromaniacs Podcast, and our Instagram page, Necromaniacs, I believe. Is that what it is? Not podcast?
Just Necromaniacs.
Just Necromaniacs.
And also, if you're so inclined, give us a review on iTunes. If you dig it, give us whatever star rating you think. 4.5 or whatever.
A million, whatever.
A million stars. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, if you got any suggestions or recommendations, like hit us up on Facebook, and we'll see if it's something we're into.
Yes, I'm curious to see if any of you check out Atroz. Very curious.
Yeah, definitely.
Let us know.
Actually, if any of you, please, if any of you do decide to take the plunge and watch Atroz, let us know, and we'll. If you write a nice note or your reflections on that, we'll
mention
read
it. Yes,
if it's like something that it's if something coherent, we'll read it.
It's not on any of the streaming services. It's a hard copy, DVD, Blu-ray from Unearthed Films.
Yeah, so
Atroz.
if you're one of those brave souls out there who wants to, venture into the darkness and actually purchase a physical copy of this thing,
there you go.
Then let us know how you feel about it, and we'll read your note, your email or whatever the hell format you send in it. Pigeon, carrier pigeon, whatever.
Yeah.
All
right. Everybody be well. We will see you next time. Cheers.
See you guys soon. Take care.